Pause for a moment and clear the noise around you, because what you are about to confront is not inspiration, it is interruption. There are seasons when encouragement is enough, when gentle reassurance steadies your steps. But this is not one of those seasons. This is a defining line in the sand. You have sensed it already in the tightening of your chest, in the restlessness that has followed you into quiet rooms, in the subtle but persistent awareness that something in your life remains unfinished. That sensation is not anxiety, and it is not imagination. It is recognition. There is a calling on your life that has moved from suggestion to requirement. It is no longer optional, no longer something to circle back to when conditions improve, when confidence rises, or when circumstances finally align. The assignment attached to your life carries urgency, and the urgency has nothing to do with panic and everything to do with timing. You have postponed pieces of it, adjusted it to fit comfort, negotiated with it in private conversations with yourself, but the core of it has never released you. That is because what God assigns, He sustains, and what He sustains, He intends to complete. The frustration you have felt over the last stretch of your journey is not rooted in confusion about your identity. It is rooted in incomplete obedience. You have been building, working, serving, surviving, but beneath all of it, there has been an unfinished instruction waiting for your full yes. The mind can rationalize delay in 100 sophisticated ways. It can call it preparation, wisdom, timing, even humility. But the Spirit recognizes when delay has become avoidance. There is a difference between waiting on God and asking God to wait on you. The weight you have been carrying is not evidence that you are incapable. It is evidence that you are accountable. Accountability is a mark of calling. Those without assignment drift without pressure. Those with assignment feel the tension of alignment whenever they step slightly off course. That tension has followed you because heaven has not withdrawn the mandate over your life. You have tried to dilute it with secondary pursuits, side missions, reasonable distractions, but the core directive remains. Finish what you are sent here to finish. Not what impresses people, not what fills time, not what generates quick validation. What you were sent here to complete. The world will applaud productivity even when it is misaligned, but heaven measures completion according to obedience. There are tasks in your life that appear successful, yet feel hollow because they are not the central thread of your calling. You know the difference. You feel it when you accomplish something and the satisfaction fades too quickly. You feel it when you achieve a milestone, yet something inside you remains unsettled. That unsettled space is not ingratitude, it is conviction. Conviction is a gift when it is rooted in divine purpose. It redirects before damage is done. Right now, you are being redirected, not away from your life, but deeper into it. The promotion you have been asking for is locked behind completion. Acceleration does not respond to ambition alone. It responds to alignment. There is something you are instructed to release, to begin, to end, to confront, to build, or to repair, and you have circled it repeatedly without executing it fully. This is not condemnation, it is clarity. Clarity can feel sharp because it removes excuses, but clarity is mercy, because it shows you exactly where the hinge of your next season is located. Your delay has not disqualified you, but it has postponed what could have already been unfolding. That realization can sting, yet it also empowers. If delay was tied to incomplete obedience, then acceleration is tied to decisive action. The narrative that you are stuck because of external forces is dissolving. Some obstacles were real, but not all of them were ultimate. Some of them were tests of resolve. Some were mirrors, revealing where fear still negotiated with faith. And some were simple invitations to trust without full visibility. You do not need another confirmation about your calling. You need courage to complete it. The voice that keeps resurfacing in your quiet moments is not random. It is consistent because it is intentional. You have attempted to silence it with busyness, with new goals, with distraction disguised as responsibility. Yet it returns. That persistence is evidence of authenticity. Fleeting ideas fade. True assignments remain. The next chapter of your life will not be unlocked by adding more. It will be unlocked by finishing what remains open. Completion is the gateway. There are conversations you must have, boundaries you must enforce, habits you must break, disciplines you must adopt, risks you must take. Each of them connects to the same core instruction. Stop postponing what you already know. This confrontation is not harsh. It is direct because your time is valuable. You are not placed on earth to orbit your calling indefinitely. You are placed here to execute it. And until you treat it as non-negotiable, the internal friction will continue. The moment you decide that your calling must be finished before anything else, clarity will sharpen, distractions will lose appeal, and your energy will reorganize around what truly matters. The restlessness you have been interpreting as instability is actually misalignment pressing for correction. Once alignment is restored, peace will not feel distant. It will feel earned. This is the turning point where you stop asking whether you are ready and start acknowledging that readiness is formed through obedience, not before it. Your calling is not waiting for perfect conditions. It is waiting for decisive completion. The truth you are standing in now requires maturity to accept. Your calling has never been unclear. It has been inconvenient. There is a significant difference between not knowing and not wanting the cost attached to what you know. If you examine the last several years of your life with precision, you will see a consistent thread. The same instruction has resurfaced in different forms, through different circumstances, through different conversations, through different internal nudges. Each time it appeared, you acknowledged it privately. Each time, you recognized its weight. And yet each time, you adjusted it slightly to fit comfort, security, or timing that felt safer. That pattern ends here. What you are confronting is not a lack of guidance. It is the final stage of avoidance before obedience becomes unavoidable. Calling carries gravity. Gravity is not emotional hype. It is structural pressure. When something significant is attached to your life, it bends your decisions toward it, even when you resist. You may have built alternate paths, explored secondary ambitions, even convinced yourself that what once felt urgent was simply youthful intensity or spiritual exaggeration. But the pressure remained. That is because calling is not erased by delay. It waits, but it does not withdraw. And now, the waiting period is closing. You have sensed acceleration hovering near you, yet it is not fully landed. Opportunities appear but do not stabilize. Progress begins but does not sustain. Momentum builds but seems to stall at the threshold. That is not coincidence. Promotion without completion would fracture your foundation. Heaven does not expand what has not been secured. You are not being denied advancement. You are being required to finish the unfinished. There is a discipline attached to destiny that many avoid because it feels restrictive at first. But discipline is not punishment. It is preparation for weight. If what you carry is significant, your structure must be fortified. The internal resistance you have felt is not weakness. It is the last defense of your comfort zone. Comfort is subtle. It does not argue loudly against obedience. It negotiates gently. It suggests waiting until you feel more confident. It suggests gathering more resources. It suggests refining your plan one more time. But perfection is often procrastination in disguise. You do not need more refinement. You need resolve. The core instruction you have postponed is directly tied to your identity stabilizing at a higher level. Until you execute it, you will continue to feel partially divided. Division drains energy. Alignment restores it. That explains the fatigue that has followed your delay. You have been expending energy managing internal conflict instead of moving forward in clarity. Once you act, that wasted tension will convert into momentum. You must understand this with sobriety. Unfinished obedience does not merely pause progress, it fragments focus. Fragmented focus leads to scattered effort. Scattered effort produces diluted results. And diluted results reinforce doubt. This cycle has repeated long enough. The confrontation you are experiencing now is mercy, because it breaks the cycle at its root. You're not being asked to do everything at once. You're being asked to complete the specific instruction already given. There is a name attached to it in your mind, a step that is lingered at the edge of action. You have rehearsed it internally. You have imagined the consequences. You have weighed the risks. But action remained theoretical. That ends when decision becomes final. Decision restructures reality. The moment you decide, without internal escape clauses, your posture shifts. Indecision weakens authority. Decisiveness strengthens it. Authority is not loud, it is settled. Once you are settled, external resistance loses intimidation. The calling on your life demands settlement. Not emotional excitement, not dramatic vows, but settled commitment. This is the hour where you stop testing alternative versions of your future and commit to the one assigned. You may lose certain comforts. You may outgrow certain relationships. You may release familiar rhythms. That is not loss. It is exchange. Every meaningful advancement requires surrender. The question is no longer whether you are capable. Capability has been proven in smaller arenas. The question is whether you are willing to remove every secondary priority that competes with completion. Calling cannot remain one option among many. It must become central. When it becomes central, everything else reorganizes around it. Your time will adjust. Your conversations will shift. Your habits will refine. Your thinking will sharpen. This is not about becoming extreme. It is about becoming focused. Focus is power concentrated. Power concentrated produces results. Results reinforce confidence. Confidence fuels further obedience. This is the upward spiral that begins with one decisive act. You have been circling the threshold long enough. The confrontation you feel is not anger from heaven. It is expectation. Expectation means you are trusted with responsibility. Responsibility means you are considered capable of carrying weight. You are not being forced, you are being summoned. Summoning implies honor. Few are confronted this directly, because few are assigned this specifically. Your life is not random, and your calling is not symbolic. It is practical, actionable, measurable. It requires finishing tangible steps, not merely embracing abstract inspiration. Completion may look simple on the surface, but its impact will be expansive. Once you close what remains open, acceleration will not need to be chased. It will follow alignment naturally. Doors will stabilize because your footing will be firm. Opportunities will sustain because your structure will support them. Clarity will remain because you will no longer be divided. This is the pivot. Not dramatic, not chaotic. Decisive. Finish what you were sent to finish before anything else. Everything that follows will flow from that act of obedience. Before you assume that the delay behind you was wasted time, you must examine it with accuracy. What felt like abandonment was reinforcement. What felt like stagnation was structural strengthening. The silence that unsettled you was not evidence of rejection, it was evidence of preparation happening outside your visibility. There are seasons when progress is loud and externally measurable, and there are seasons when development is internal and intentionally concealed. You have just walked through the latter. The financial strain that pressed against you was not random. It forced you to confront motives, to separate ego from purpose, to identify whether your calling was tied to applause or obedience. Provision that comes too early can distort character. Pressure that comes at the right time refines it. You may have questioned why stability seemed inconsistent while others advanced with apparent ease. Comparison, if left unchecked, would have eroded your confidence. Instead, you were driven inward. Inward is where fortification happens. When resources are limited, discipline sharpens. When options narrow, focus intensifies. You are not being denied. You are being conditioned. Conditioning is uncomfortable because it exposes weaknesses you did not realize were present. You learned where your faith was fragile. You discovered where fear still influenced your decisions. You saw how quickly discouragement could alter your tone. That exposure was not humiliation. It was calibration. A structure cannot carry weight if its fractures remain hidden. The silence allowed fractures to surface privately, so they would not collapse publicly. Consider the emotional disappointments you endured. Betrayals that came from trusted individuals were not pleasant lessons, but they were clarifying ones. They revealed misplaced reliance. They redirected your dependency back to a source that does not fluctuate. Trusting people is necessary, but anchoring identity in them is dangerous. When certain relationships fractured, it was not proof that you misheard your calling. It was proof that not everyone assigned to a chapter is assigned to the entire book. You had to learn discernment at a deeper level. Discernment is rarely acquired through comfort. It develops through tension. You began to notice subtle inconsistencies in character, small compromises in integrity, quiet shifts in loyalty. That awareness was sharpened through experience. Now you see more clearly. Now you evaluate more wisely. That clarity is reinforcement. Health struggles and unexplained fatigue were also part of this season of strengthening. Stress accumulates when identity and assignment are misaligned. The body often reflects internal conflict before the mind acknowledges it. Your exhaustion was not solely physical. It was the weight of carrying expectations that were not fully yours to carry. You were operating beyond your grace zone in certain areas, and your body signaled that imbalance. When progress slowed you down, it was mercy. Burnout would have damaged more than your schedule. It would have distorted your perspective. Slowing down forced reflection. Reflection revealed where you had overextended. Overextension frequently masquerades as dedication, but it is often driven by insecurity. You were reinforced by learning boundaries. Boundaries are not selfish. They are strategic. They protect the core assignment from dilution. Watching others succeed while you waited was another layer of strengthening. Jealousy may have attempted to surface, but deeper than that was confusion. You questioned why your path seemed longer. What you did not see was the foundation being poured beneath you. Rapid visibility without deep grounding leads to instability. You were being grounded. Grounding feels invisible because it happens below the surface. The world celebrates visible milestones, but heaven often prioritizes invisible formation. You are being formed. Formation requires repetition, obscurity, and endurance. Endurance stretches capacity. Capacity determines sustainability. The silence you interpreted as absence was actually strategic restraint. Exposure too early would have amplified weaknesses still under construction. You were shielded. Shielding can feel like isolation, yet it is protection from premature elevation. Every time you thought you were being overlooked, you are actually being observed. Your private responses to disappointment mattered more than public recognition. How you handled discouragement, how you responded to delayed answers, how you maintained integrity when no one was watching. These were reinforcement exercises. Reinforcement builds resilience. Resilience sustains longevity. You are not being prepared for a short surge of influence. You are being prepared for durable impact. Durability is forged in hidden seasons. Hidden seasons test consistency without applause. They measure whether you will continue when results are not immediate. You continued. Even when you doubted, you did not fully quit. That persistence is evidence of structural strengthening. You learned to pray without emotional fireworks. You learned to act without immediate reward. You learned to trust without complete understanding. Those lessons cannot be downloaded in moments of ease. They are carved through pressure. Pressure, when interpreted correctly, is not destructive. It is developmental. The wilderness seasons described throughout Scripture were not punishments. They were preparation grounds. Wilderness removes excess. It strips distraction. It clarifies dependence. You have been in a modern wilderness, not geographically, but internally. Distractions were reduced. Noise was minimized. Certain doors closed abruptly. That narrowing was intentional. Narrowing intensifies focus. Focus strengthens execution. Execution requires stamina. Stamina is not built in celebration. It is built in endurance. The silence strengthened your inner life so that when noise returns, you will not be destabilized by it. Reinforcement often feels like regression because visible progress slows, but regression would have diminished you. This season expanded you internally. You can handle more now than you could before. You perceive more. You tolerate less misalignment. You recognize subtle redirection faster. These are signs of strengthening. What felt like being held back was actually being built up. And as this reinforcement phase concludes, you will recognize that nothing was wasted. Every strain, every tear, every quiet decision to remain faithful contributed to structural integrity. Structural integrity is what will allow you to carry the next phase without collapsing under its weight. There is another dimension to reinforcement that you only recognize in retrospect. It is the internal rewiring that happens when external affirmation disappears. When encouragement grows scarce and outcomes are delayed, your motivation is exposed. Are you moving because you are seen or because you are called? In the silence, that question confronted you repeatedly. When no one applauded your consistency, when progress was not visible enough to justify explanation, when even your own confidence fluctuated, you were left with one stabilizing factor: conviction. Conviction is quieter than excitement, but it is far more durable. Excitement spikes and fades. Conviction anchors. In that hidden stretch of time, your dependence shifted from visible results to internal assurance. That shift is foundational. If your momentum had remained dependent on validation, the next level would have destabilized you. Validation is inconsistent. Conviction is steady. Reinforcement replaced the former with the latter. The isolation you experienced also carried strategic purpose. Isolation and loneliness are not identical. Loneliness drains. Isolation refines. In isolation, your voice becomes clearer to yourself. The noise of competing opinions diminishes. The pressure to perform softens. You are left face to face with your own thoughts, motives, and fears. That confrontation can be uncomfortable, but it is necessary for leadership. Leadership without self-awareness becomes destructive. During the silence, you became more aware of your internal patterns. You identified where insecurity still influenced your decisions. You noticed how quickly you could overcommit in order to avoid disappointing others. You recognized subtle pride disguised as independence. Those realizations were not setbacks. they were fortifications. Self-awareness strengthens stewardship. You cannot manage greater influence if you do not understand your own tendencies. The financial unpredictability you endured was not merely about provision. It was about trust architecture. When resources fluctuated, you were forced to reevaluate what security truly meant. Security that depends solely on numbers is fragile. When numbers shift, panic follows. But when your sense of stability transfers from circumstance to source, resilience increases. You began to detach your identity from income, status, and visible markers of success. That detachment was not loss. It was purification. Purified motives sustain long-term impact. If wealth or recognition arrives now, it will not redefine you. Reinforcement ensured that your foundation was not built on outcomes that can evaporate. Emotional endurance was strengthened as well. You carried disappointment without collapsing into bitterness. Bitterness is an easy response when expectations are unmet. It feels justified, it feels protective, but it corrodes perspective. Instead of hardening, you were stretched. Stretching feels painful because it expands capacity beyond comfort. You had to forgive when you preferred distance. You had to remain steady when you preferred withdrawal. You had to continue investing effort when visible return was minimal. Those responses did not merely preserve your character, they expanded it. Expansion of character increases weight tolerance. The next phase of your life will require emotional steadiness that you did not previously possess. Now you do. Silence also refined your discernment regarding timing. Earlier in your journey, urgency may have been mistaken for readiness. You may have equated desire with qualification. But in the quiet season, you learned to distinguish between impulse and instruction. Not every opportunity that appears is aligned. Not every open door is assigned. When fewer doors were available, your evaluation process sharpened. You learned to ask deeper questions. You learned to pause before committing. You learned that speed without clarity leads to rework, that patience is reinforcement. It protects future acceleration from becoming chaos. Another critical layer of strengthening was the recalibration of your expectations. You once imagined that calling would feel consistently inspiring, consistently affirming, consistently progressive. Instead, you encountered monotony, repetition, and obscurity. That recalibration removed romanticism from your assignment. Calling is not sustained by emotion. It is sustained by discipline. You built discipline in the dark. You showed up when it felt repetitive. You practiced when it felt unnoticed. You studied when there was no immediate platform. Those repetitions were not glamorous, but they were formative. Excellence develops in repetition. Repetition builds mastery. Mastery sustains credibility. You also developed a healthier relationship with limits. Previously, you may have resisted them, interpreting them as obstacles. In reinforcement, you learned to respect them. Limits clarify priorities. They force selection. When you cannot do everything, you must decide what matters most. That decision-making process sharpened your sense of hierarchy. Not all tasks carry equal weight. Not all relationships require equal access. Not all opportunities deserve equal energy. Hierarchical clarity protects your core mission from fragmentation. Without it, expansion would scatter you. With it, expansion will concentrate you. Perhaps most importantly, your identity detached from pace. You are no longer measuring your worth by how quickly you advance. That shift is subtle but profound. Comparison once tempted you to question your timeline. Now you understand that durability outweighs speed. Quick ascent without reinforced character produces short-lived influence. Slower ascent with strengthened foundations produces longevity. Reinforcement prioritized longevity. You are being prepared not for a moment, but for a sustained season. As this phase closes, you may still feel traces of the fatigue it produced. That is natural. Reinforcement requires exertion, but what remains is not depletion. It is density. There is more substance to you now, more steadiness, more discernment, more restraint, more clarity about what you will and will not tolerate. That density will anchor you when visibility increases. It will prevent you from being swayed by sudden praise or destabilized by criticism. The silence did not mean inactivity. It meant construction. Construction often happens behind walls before unveiling. When unveiling begins, observers will see growth and assume it happened suddenly. It did not. It was reinforced quietly, layer by layer, decision by decision, restraint by restraint. You are emerging from reinforcement not as someone who merely survived delay, but as someone structurally fortified by it. And because of that fortification, what comes next will not overwhelm you. It will rest on a foundation that has already been tested and strengthened in the hidden places. Now that confrontation has clarified your responsibility and reinforcement has strengthened your structure, the next movement is not emotional, it is strategic. Reassignment is not vague inspiration, it is precise instruction. When God shifts a season, He does not merely elevate language around you, He narrows focus within you. The first instruction is the end of scattered focus. For too long, your energy has been distributed across too many directions, some good, some harmless, some subtly misaligned. Scattered focus does not always look like chaos. Sometimes it looks like productivity. But productivity without precision dilutes impact. You were never called to do everything that you are capable of doing. Capability is broad. Assignment is specific. In this next stretch, your field of responsibility is narrowing. That narrowing may initially feel restrictive, but it is acceleration in disguise. When a river spreads thin across a flat surface, it loses force. When it is channeled through a narrower path, its power intensifies. The narrowing of your focus is the channeling of your strength. You will notice that certain interests lose their appeal. Certain optional commitments feel heavy rather than energizing. This is not burnout, it is refinement. Within a short period, clarity will sharpen in a way that feels almost undeniable. You will not need 10 confirmations. One clear internal conviction will outweigh a dozen external suggestions. The fog that hovered over your direction will dissolve because you have chosen to stop entertaining parallel paths. The second instruction deepens this shift. Eliminate every distraction that competes with your calling. Not manage, not minimize. Eliminate. Distractions are rarely obvious threats. They are often familiar comforts, patterns you have normalized, relationships that feel safe but subtly drain your discipline. A distraction does not need to be immoral to be misaligned. It simply needs to consume attention that belongs elsewhere. You have tolerated certain habits because they were not destructive enough to cause alarm. But neutrality can be as dangerous as overt opposition when it quietly siphons your focus. In this reassignment season, tolerance decreases. What once felt harmless will begin to feel costly. You will recognize how even minor diversions fracture momentum. Momentum thrives on continuity. Distraction interrupts continuity. The instruction is not harsh, it is protective. If your calling is weighty, your environment must support it. You cannot carry greater responsibility while maintaining patterns that erode concentration. This elimination may involve redefining boundaries, restructuring time, or severing recurring cycles that feel emotionally familiar. Comfort is not confirmation. Familiarity is not destiny. The third instruction requires the greatest maturity: immediate obedience. Agreement is not obedience. Intention is not obedience. Emotion is not obedience. Obedience is action taken in response to instruction. You have accumulated insight over the past seasons. You have heard guidance in prayer, in reflection, in moments of stillness. But some of that guidance remains unexecuted. Reassignment demands speed in response. Delayed obedience accumulates friction. Each time you postpone a step you already understand, you reinforce hesitation. Hesitation weakens authority. Authority grows when response is prompt. In the coming days, you will encounter opportunities that mirror instructions previously given. They may appear subtle, almost ordinary, but they will be hinges. Your response will determine whether the previous seasons of reinforcement convert into visible progress. Immediate obedience does not require full visibility of outcome. It requires trust in source. When you move quickly on clear instruction, you break the cycle of overanalysis that once delayed you. Overanalysis often masquerades as wisdom, but frequently, it is fear seeking additional certainty. Certainty is rarely given in full.
Enough light is provided for the next step, not the entire staircase.
The fourth instruction addresses a hidden barrier. Release the need for approval. As your focus narrows and your obedience accelerates, misunderstanding will surface. People who benefited from your scattered energy may question your new boundaries. Those accustomed to your accessibility may interpret your discipline as distance. If you require universal affirmation to proceed, you will stall at the first sign of resistance. Reassignment often isolates before it elevates. Isolation here does not mean abandonment. It means refinement of allegiance. Whose voice ultimately governs your decisions? If you are anchored in external validation, criticism will destabilize you. But if you are anchored in conviction, criticism will refine without redirecting you. There may be moments where someone close to you questions your direction. Their doubt will feel heavy because proximity amplifies influence.
Yet their confusion is not your correction. You must distinguish between counsel and projection. Not every concern raised is a divine warning. Some are reflections of others' comfort zones being disrupted by your growth. Releasing the need for approval does not make you indifferent. It makes you steady. Steadiness is required for the next level of assignment. As these first 4 instructions integrate, you will feel a shift in internal posture. Less negotiation, less scattered thinking, less emotional dependency on applause, more clarity, more decisiveness, more alignment between what you know and what you do. Reassignment is not about becoming someone new. It is about becoming undivided. And undivided focus, eliminated distraction, immediate obedience, and independence from approval form the structural base for everything that follows. As these first instructions stabilize within you, the 5th instruction brings order to what once felt uncertain. Honor divine sequence. Sequence is one of the most misunderstood elements of calling. Many people fail not because they lack vision, but because they attempt to live in step 10 while still standing in step 3. Sequence protects you from premature exposure and unnecessary strain. When you try to accelerate beyond your appointed order, you inherit pressure that grace was not yet assigned to carry. That is why frustration intensified in prior seasons when you forced outcomes or tried to control timing. The strain was not evidence of incapability. It was evidence of misalignment with sequence. Divine sequence does not reveal the entire blueprint at once. It reveals the next actionable step. That can feel limiting to an ambitious mind, but it is stabilizing to a disciplined spirit. You are being trained to value precision over speed. When you obey in order, momentum builds organically. When you skip ahead, you create structural gaps that must later be repaired. In the coming weeks, you will begin to see subtle confirmations that your steps are being ordered. A conversation will connect at the right time.
A resource will appear without manipulation. An opportunity will surface that aligns seamlessly with what you have already been refining. These are not coincidences. They are indicators that sequence is active. Your responsibility is not to force doors, but to walk faithfully through the ones that open in order. The sixth instruction expands your understanding beyond personal ambition. Your obedience is generational. Up until now, you may have framed your calling primarily in terms of personal fulfillment or individual success. That perspective is incomplete. When obedience aligns with assignment, its impact extends beyond your immediate sphere. Patterns that persisted in your family line, cycles of fear, compromise, scarcity thinking, or emotional instability, begin to break when one individual chooses disciplined alignment. You are not simply finishing a task for yourself. You are altering trajectories connected to you. That realization adds weight, but it also adds clarity. Your hesitation has never affected only you. Delayed obedience ripples outward, just as decisive action does. The moment you treat your calling as generational rather than optional, your resolve strengthens. Excuses weaken when you recognize that your faithfulness creates pathways others will later walk. There will be confirmations of this broader impact. You may witness shifts in people around you that trace back to your own boundaries. You may hear testimony that your courage inspired someone to confront their own stagnation. Influence multiplies quietly at first. You will not always see immediate evidence, but you will sense that your alignment is producing more than personal gain. That awareness protects you from shrinking back when obedience feels costly. The seventh instruction sustains everything the previous six activate. Discipline over emotion. Emotion can ignite passion, but discipline sustains fire. In earlier seasons, you may have relied on inspiration to move. When motivation was high, productivity followed. When motivation dipped, momentum slowed. That pattern cannot continue at the level you are entering. Discipline is consistency independent of mood. It is choosing the correct action even when enthusiasm is absent. It is structuring your days in a way that protects your focus, guards your mind, and reinforces your priorities. Discipline in thought means refusing to entertain narratives that weaken your confidence. Discipline in speech means aligning your words with conviction rather than doubt. Discipline in time means allocating energy according to assignment rather than impulse. Discipline in obedience means responding promptly without waiting for emotional confirmation. This training may feel rigid at first, but it produces freedom. When your habits align with your purpose, friction decreases. You spend less energy debating what to do because your structure already supports the correct action. Stability replaces volatility. That stability is essential because acceleration without discipline leads to burnout or collapse. As these 7 instructions integrate, reassignment becomes tangible. You are no longer navigating abstract inspiration. You are walking a mapped path. Scattered focus has narrowed. Distractions are being eliminated. Obedience is becoming immediate. Approval is losing its control. Sequence is honored. Generational impact is acknowledged. Discipline is established. This is structural transformation. It does not always feel dramatic, but it is decisive. You will notice that your conversations change. You speak with greater clarity and less apology. Your decisions require less consultation because your internal compass is aligned. Temptations that once lingered lose their persuasive force because your priorities are settled. Even when resistance appears, it will not carry the same destabilizing weight because your foundation is reinforced and your map is clear. Reassignment is not emotional hype. It is structural repositioning. You are being positioned in a way that supports sustained impact rather than temporary momentum. The instructions are not suggestions, they are coordinates. Follow them precisely, and you will not need to chase acceleration.
Acceleration will meet you at the intersection of disciplined obedience and ordered steps. As reassignment settles and discipline strengthens, you must be aware of a predictable pattern that emerges before acceleration becomes visible. There is often a test that appears subtle, rational, and even beneficial on the surface. It does not announce itself as opposition. It does not resemble danger. It arrives clothed as opportunity, relief, or practicality. This is the moment where discernment must operate at its highest level. When you commit to focused obedience, resistance rarely confronts you with obvious destruction. It approaches with redirection. Redirection is far more dangerous than direct attack because it feels harmless. It does not ask you to abandon your calling outright. It simply invites you to adjust it slightly, delay it briefly, or dilute it strategically. The test is not whether you can recognize something evil. The test is whether you can recognize something misaligned. Within a short window after decisive commitment, something familiar may reappear. A conversation that pulls you back into an old pattern. An offer that seems financially convenient but shifts your priorities. A relationship dynamic that feels comfortable yet subtly drains your focus. It will look reasonable. It will sound wise. It may even be affirmed by people who value security over obedience. That is why this test is sophisticated. It does not present chaos. It presents compromise. Compromise in small degrees rarely triggers alarm, but it accumulates consequences. A few degrees off course can place you miles away from your intended destination over time. This is not dramatic exaggeration. It is structural truth. The enemy does not need to collapse your life if he can slightly adjust your trajectory. Slight adjustment, sustained over time, produces significant deviation. The most dangerous phrase during this window is, "Just for now." Just for now, I will delay that step. Just for now, I will revisit that habit. Just for now, I will accept this offer, even though it complicates my focus. Temporary compromise often becomes prolonged stagnation. The test examines whether your obedience is emotional or settled. Emotional obedience is strong when inspiration is fresh, but weak when convenience appears. Settled obedience remains firm even when alternative paths seem attractive. Becoming distraction may appeal to your desire for comfort. After seasons of reinforcement and discipline, you may feel entitled to relief. Relief itself is not wrong, but relief that contradicts instruction is costly. You must ask a more precise question than, "Is this good?" The better question is this aligned? Good opportunities can still be misaligned if they interrupt sequence. You have already been instructed to honor divine order. This test probes whether you truly trust that order. There is also a psychological component to this moment. When you move toward greater responsibility, your mind may crave something familiar to stabilize the transition. Familiarity provides emotional ease, but familiarity can also reintroduce patterns you have outgrown. Growth often feels uncomfortable precisely because it is unfamiliar. If you retreat to what feels known simply because it is known, you abort the expansion you have been prepared for. The test is not proof that you are weak. It is proof that you are close to movement. Pressure intensifies near breakthrough because resistance recognizes proximity. That is why the distraction may feel urgent. Urgency creates the illusion that immediate response is required. But urgency that bypasses peace is rarely from God. Peace does not always mean ease, but it carries steadiness. Distraction carries agitation disguised as logic. When evaluating the opportunity that appears, monitor your internal atmosphere. Does it align with the conviction you have cultivated, or does it subtly pull you back into old mental negotiations? Another layer of this test involves external voices. Someone may present the distraction as wise counsel. They may emphasize security, practicality, or reputation.
Their perspective may not be malicious. It may simply be limited by their own comfort zone. You must distinguish between advice that supports your assignment and advice that protects their preferences. When you elevate, it disrupts relational equilibrium. Not everyone adjusts easily. Their suggestion to slow down or pivot may reflect their fear rather than your correction. You are not required to justify every decision to those who do not share your conviction. The test examines whether you require consensus to remain obedient. Consensus is not confirmation. Confirmation is internal alignment, reinforced by disciplined clarity. If you pass this test, something shifts immediately. Passing does not necessarily produce instant visible reward, but it solidifies your authority. Authority grows when you refuse to negotiate with misalignment. Each time you reject distraction disguised as opportunity, your confidence strengthens. You begin to trust your discernment at a higher level. That trust stabilizes you for future decisions. If you fail this test, the consequence is not catastrophic destruction. It is delay. Delay reintroduces cycles you have already outgrown. You may find yourself rebuilding the same clarity again months later. That repetition is avoidable through decisive alignment now. The 72-hour window is symbolic of immediacy. When the moment presents itself, do not stall in overanalysis. Evaluate quickly, but not impulsively. Ask whether it supports the narrowed focus you have committed to. Ask whether it honors sequence. Ask whether it reinforces discipline or erodes it. Then act with confidence. This test is not about perfection. It is about loyalty to what you already know. You have been reinforced, instructed, and aligned. Now your resolve is being examined in real time. Passing this test does not merely preserve your trajectory. It unlocks acceleration that has been waiting for your unwavering yes. If you understand the nature of this test, you will recognize that its greatest strength lies in subtlety. It does not confront your belief system directly. It attempts to negotiate with your priorities. It appeals to logic, timing, and practicality. It suggests that a slight detour will not alter your destination. But destiny is not reached by intention alone. It is reached by disciplined consistency. The redirection may appear small enough to justify. It may promise temporary financial ease, emotional familiarity, or social acceptance. It may even look like an answered prayer. That is why discernment must operate beyond surface evaluation. Not every open door is an assigned door. Some doors open to measure whether you have internalized the discipline you claimed to embrace. The most deceptive distractions are those that align with parts of your calling while subtly compromising its core. They feel adjacent to your purpose, close enough to rationalize, but misaligned enough to dilute your focus. This is the difference between progress and precision. Progress alone is insufficient if it moves you slightly off course. Precision keeps your trajectory intact. In this moment, your loyalty to precision is being observed. When something presents itself within this testing window, pause before responding. Immediate reaction, driven by relief or fear, undermines clarity. Instead, measure it against the structure you have built. Does it protect your narrowed focus, or does it fracture it? Does it strengthen your discipline, or does it invite old habits back into your routine? Does it align with sequence, or does it rush you into a stage that bypasses foundational steps? These questions are not theoretical. They are protective filters. The test is not asking whether you desire success. It is asking whether you value alignment more than convenience. Convenience often masquerades as wisdom. It argues that efficiency requires flexibility. Flexibility is valuable when it supports direction. It is dangerous when it erodes conviction. The difference lies in motive. Are you adjusting because the path is being redirected by divine clarity, or because discomfort is pressing you toward easier terrain? Discomfort does not automatically indicate misalignment. Often, discomfort accompanies growth. If every step forward feels entirely comfortable, You may not be stretching beyond prior limitations. The distraction may offer comfort at the cost of expansion. It may feel safer than the risk inherent in obedience, but safety that contradicts instruction becomes stagnation. Another element of this test is identity stability. When you move toward higher responsibility, insecurity can resurface in subtle ways. You may question whether you are truly ready. The distraction may seem like a fallback option, a contingency plan, in case the larger assignment feels overwhelming. But fallback plans, rooted in fear, undermine forward movement. If you prepare an escape route for every step of obedience, you will never fully commit.
Commitment requires closing secondary exits. That closure feels intense because it removes emotional cushions. Yet without closure, your energy remains divided. Division weakens authority. Authority strengthens when alternatives are consciously surrendered. There may also be emotional attachments intertwined with the distraction. Familiar conversations, familiar rhythms, familiar validations. When you eliminate distraction, you also eliminate the emotional feedback loops attached to it. That absence can feel like loss, even if the pattern was misaligned. You must differentiate between emotional nostalgia and spiritual necessity. Nostalgia romanticizes what you have outgrown. Necessity prioritizes what you are becoming. If you choose nostalgia, you will slow your transformation. If you choose necessity, you will accelerate it. The 72-hour window symbolizes a compressed decision cycle. This is not a season for prolonged internal debate over instructions already clarified.
Overthinking is often disguised reluctance. You have been reinforced, disciplined, and narrowed for this reason, to act with clarity when subtle compromise appears. Passing this test may not produce immediate visible reward, but it produces internal solidity. Internal solidity precedes external acceleration. When you reject the distraction, you will feel a shift. It may not be dramatic, but it will be definitive. Your confidence will sharpen. Your focus will intensify. Your sense of authority will deepen. These internal shifts signal that alignment has been preserved. Soon after, you will notice that movement begins to occur without force. Opportunities aligned with your sequence will present themselves naturally. Connections will stabilize. Resources will appear in proportion to your obedience. This is not transactional. It is structural. When alignment is intact, momentum flows without friction. If you were to accept the distraction, you would feel subtle fragmentation. Energy would split, clarity would blur, discipline would weaken incrementally. None of it would feel catastrophic at first. That is precisely why it is dangerous. Fragmentation compounds slowly until momentum stalls. But you are no longer unaware of this pattern. Awareness increases accountability. You are being trusted with discernment because you have matured through reinforcement. This test is confirmation of proximity to expansion. It is evidence that your commitment carries weight. Refuse to interpret the appearance of distraction as coincidence. It is a measuring point. Choose alignment decisively. Close the door without apology. Protect your focus without guilt. Trust that what is aligned will not require compromise to sustain itself. When you stand firm in this window, you signal readiness for the acceleration that follows. And acceleration, once unlocked through disciplined obedience, will not feel chaotic.
It will feel earned, stable, and structurally supported by every decision you made to remain aligned when compromise appeared reasonable. Once the test is passed and alignment is preserved, acceleration does not arrive as noise. It arrives as movement. What once required force begins to respond with cooperation. Doors that resisted begin to open without excessive negotiation. Conversations that once stalled begin to carry clarity. You will recognize this shift
not because everything becomes effortless, but because resistance no longer feels like opposition to your identity. It feels like normal friction that does not threaten your direction. Acceleration is not chaos. It is ordered momentum. The provision attached to your calling will begin to surface in ways that feel both practical and intentional. Financial shifts may occur, not as random windfalls detached from purpose, but as resources aligned with assignment. You will see that what God initiates, He funds.
Provision will not inflate ego. It will expand capacity. Debts that once felt immovable may begin to shrink. Opportunities for increase may align with the very discipline you cultivated in hidden seasons. The difference now is that you will handle provision with sobriety rather than desperation. Reinforcement removed the need to prove yourself through wealth. Now wealth, or whatever form of increase arrives, will serve the mission rather than redefine your identity. Relational acceleration will also become visible. Certain connections that drained your focus will fall away without dramatic conflict. You will feel less compelled to chase approval or maintain dynamics that dilute your clarity. In their place, relationships will form that reinforce direction. These individuals will not compete with your calling. They will respect it. They will sharpen your thinking, challenge your complacency, and strengthen your resolve. You will recognize them, not by charisma, but by alignment. Their presence will feel steady, not distracting. This is not coincidence. As your internal structure stabilized, your relational environment recalibrated. Completion requires reinforcement from the right voices. Isolation prepared you. Alignment now surrounds you with those capable of walking beside you without pulling you backward. Physical and mental restoration will follow as well. The fatigue that once felt unexplainable will gradually ease because the internal conflict that produced it has diminished. When obedience aligns with assignment, energy reorganizes. You will wake with clearer intention. Decision-making will require less emotional expenditure because your priorities are settled. Anxiety that once circled repetitive doubts will lose its intensity because there is no longer unresolved instruction creating friction. A sound mind is not the absence of thought. It is the presence of order. Order restores stamina. As your mind steadies, your body follows. Aina may not appear dramatic, but it will be consistent. Strength will return incrementally, anchored in disciplined habits rather than temporary bursts of motivation. With acceleration comes a subtle but undeniable increase in authority. Authority is not loud. It is recognized rather than announced. When you enter spaces now, you will carry weight that was forged in silence. Your words will hold more substance because they are backed by lived obedience. Decisions will feel less reactive and more deliberate. People may respond differently to you, not because you are performing differently, but because your alignment radiates stability. Authority is born from completion. You finished what was pending. You passed the test. You honored sequence. That history builds credibility in both spiritual and practical realms. However, acceleration carries its own warning. Speed without sustained discipline invites collapse. The very momentum that affirms your obedience can become intoxicating if you allow results to replace reverence. This is where many falter. They interpret increase as arrival rather than responsibility. But acceleration is not the goal. Completion remains the goal. Even as doors open, you must guard the disciplines that carried you here. Continue eliminating distraction. Continue honoring sequence. Continue responding with immediate obedience. Do not allow new visibility to fragment your focus again. The discipline you built in obscurity must persist in exposure. If you idolize outcomes, you will compromise structure. If you remain anchored in obedience, outcomes will stabilize naturally. There will be moments where success tempts you to expand beyond assignment prematurely. resist that urge. Expansion must remain aligned with sequence. You are not called to maximize attention. You are called to complete purpose. Completion requires patience, even in seasons of speed.
You must measure progress by alignment rather than applause. As acceleration unfolds, remember that what is being built is not temporary momentum, but lasting impact. Generational influence continues to ripple outward. You may begin to see tangible evidence of how your obedience shifted others. Doors will open for those connected to you. Conversations will occur that would not have happened had you remained stagnant. These are confirmations that your completion carried broader consequence. Yet humility must guard your perspective. You are a steward, not the source. Stewardship requires continued surrender. Completion is not a single act. It is a posture maintained over time. The ultimate measure of this season will not be how fast things moved, but whether you remained aligned as they did. If you protect alignment, acceleration will not overwhelm you. It will refine you further. Provision will not corrupt you. It will empower you. Authority will not isolate you. It will anchor you. And when you look back at the seasons of confrontation, reinforcement, instruction, and testing, you will recognize that none of it was excessive. It was necessary. The calling that once felt heavy will now feel defined. Not because the weight disappeared, but because your structure strengthened. Finish what you were sent to finish, and continue finishing it daily. That is how destiny is sustained. If this message did more than just pass through your ears, if it confronted you, steadied you, clarified you, or pushed you toward finishing what you've been delaying, then don't leave it sitting in silence. Engagement is not about algorithms. It's about agreement. When you like this video, you signal that this message matters. When you comment, you anchor your decision in public conviction. When you share it, you extend the same clarity to someone else who may be standing at their own crossroads. So take a moment right now. Click like, not casually, but intentionally. Write a comment that reflects your decision. Something simple but firm, like, I will finish what I started, or alignment over distraction. That declaration is not for performance. It's reinforcement. Words solidify commitment. And if you know someone who has been restless, distracted, or stuck in delay, send this to them. Your share could be the interruption that resets their direction. Make sure you subscribe and stay connected. These messages are not random motivation. They are structured guidance for seasons that require clarity, discipline, and resolve. If you're serious about completing your calling, don't disconnect from consistent reinforcement. This is not just content. This is a pivot point. Stay aligned, stay disciplined, and finish what you were sent here to finish.